Now, it's the off season in the NFL when stuff like this starts to fly around. One of the biggest rumors, and I'm going to stress rumors of the last week in the NFL, was this whole story that came out of Minnesota where apparently there was rumblings in the Vikings draft room that if they were able to, the Vikings considered trading up to draft Malik Neighbors, and in doing so, they would have traded Justin Jefferson in the process. Now, I want to, before everybody in the comments goes off and kills us for this, it has been refuted by ESPN's Kevin Seifert saying, like, this is a cool story, bro, but not true, basically. Um, it is interesting to talk about, though, because I think the fact that we can even get to this conversation and say, like, well, obviously that's stupid, but why would they think of doing that? I think it does bring up some interesting possibilities. Now, Simon, when you heard this rumor, was there any sort of devil's advocate in your head going, "Well, I can see why they might want to do that"?
Well, and I said this to you when you brought it up, actually, was just the fact of the only possible thing I could think of was salary wise. Maybe, I don't know how long, off the top of my head, I don't have the number in front of me, how long Justin Jefferson's rookie contract continues to go on here. But I'm
I don't. I think it
assuming,
might be the last year.
is it the last year? Well, then there you go, right? That I feel like the only reason that would possibly make sense is if you already kind of know you're having issues. There's a potential he might not want to come back, and if he does, you're paying him a lot more than you might want to, which I think is going to be the case anyway. He's probably going to want a boatload, but yeah, it's salary's the only thing I can think of because you're basically trading one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL for. I mean, Neighbors is going to be good. I think that's the general assumption. The Giants have obviously got themselves a very good prospect, but are you really going to go right out and assume that he's going to be better than Jefferson? That feels insane. Even if he is a good
Yeah.
prospect, that's not a risk you want to take. It's just
Yeah.
like I don't know. At least to me, playing devil's advocate for something like that feels insane if you're going to ignore the potential cap issues that they might be having behind closed doors. But I don't know. I right off the jump, it just feels rather strange for sure.
Yeah. And obviously, um, it was probably like it's kind of come out the last couple days. Nothing to begin with. I do think it's kind of an interesting thought experiment. I think you're right in terms of it's probably the contract that's going to be the killer here. If they were at all considering doing this, at all considering moving on from him, I think you look at a couple things. I think you look at the fact that this team probably isn't going to be very good, at least for another couple of years. Obviously, drafted J.J. McCarthy, not necessarily the most home run swing type quarterback prospect. Um, you've got obviously right now a good receiver core, but past that, not a ton of talent. Kind of a roster that's aging out a little bit. Um, and after the loss of Kirk Cousins, you're kind of scrambling, looking what to do. Maybe you think hit the reset button, trade, get a ton of draft capital back for Justin Jefferson, and like fully rebuild. Obviously, that's still kind of absurd because nobody you're going to draft is going to be as good as Justin Jefferson. But maybe you think that way just because of how much money you'd have to pay him for the team to probably not even contend. The other thing that I can think of maybe is maybe they're thinking that they want to do what they did with Stephon Diggs again, where the whole reason they got Justin Jefferson was they traded Stephon Diggs when he was still good to get a draft pick to replace him. And obviously that worked out great for them. Um, Stephon Diggs was also good in Buffalo, but they got a significantly better receiver in Justin Jefferson. And maybe they're thinking, well, hey, maybe we can do the exact same thing again and maybe get even more. Um, but even then, I think that thinking is flawed. We've seen other teams try to do it and it hasn't worked. Cough, cough, Titans trading A.J. Brown to draft
Yeah,
Traylon Burks, that kind
that's
of thing.
actually a really good
Um,
example.
yeah. So I think, I think those reasons potentially are why you might do it, but I think all of them kind of fall flat when you put a little bit more critical thinking behind it, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I like I said before, it's way harder to play devil's advocate. I mean, we can shit on the whole idea behind the entire thing for hours if we wanted to, because yeah, like you said, like I think that's a good point. I think that is a good point because they did pull it off, getting Jefferson and trading Diggs, but I mean, you got to think that's more luck than actual scouting
Yeah.
or anything related to that, because I mean, at the end of the day, no matter how good a prospect is, there's always going to be a couple busts. And I'm not, again, I'm going to emphasize this because I'm going to say this a lot, I think, in this segment. I'm not saying that I think Neighbors will be a bust. I'm just saying that I think the chances of him being even remotely close to what Jefferson is in the NFL is probably a chance. You'd probably don't want to roll those dice, like
No.
realistically. I think right now, if they were to offer a trade to the Giants, Jefferson for Neighbors, and of course they would have gotten something else for Jefferson. I'm ignoring that. But if you were to offer that to the Giants, I think the Giants would immediately take that in a heartbeat, and all of New York would instantly celebrate.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, absolutely.
and it's not a
Here,
diss on Neighbors. It absolutely isn't. It's just the
no.
fact that Jefferson
Well,
is an insane receiver.
yeah, and it's unproven commodity for known quantity, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think even just that, like, even if Neighbors is that good, it's still an if. And I think that takes away a lot of it. Um, I think if we're gonna think about this more and kind of play this out a little bit more, I'll just kind of throw the question to you. Obviously, trading up for Neighbors to trade Jefferson, not gonna happen, didn't happen, and kind of ridiculous in premise. What if you're the Vikings? What would you accept in a trade for Justin Jefferson?
Ooh.
How much would it take?
It's it's so weird asking questions like that these days, especially with how low we've seen some trade deals be for players not quite as good as Jefferson. I still think he'd probably be the best one out of the bunch, but you got to think it'd be a first, right? At least for me, you got to think at least you're getting a first. Like, it'd be insane to get anything otherwise.
You're going too low immediately.
I know, and I know that. Like, in my head, I immediately think like what I'd be trading for him in Madden, and I'm thinking I'm not gonna have a first round pick for 5 years. But it's the type of thing where some deals have been so, like, what did they trade Diggs for back in the first place? What did they get for him? Wasn't it like a first round pick? And yeah, it was a first. Did they get anything else, or was it just one?
To get Jefferson?
Yeah.
I
guess I'm asking you, assuming you know off the top of your head.
No, I don't. But
Yeah.
I'm looking it up right now. I know it was it was obviously the first round pick.
Yeah.
I
think they got like a first and
which
a
I
bit
believe
more.
was I believe it was like pick 2022 that they eventually took Justin Jefferson with.
If we're talking about a fair package, I think they should be asking for as much as like 2 first round picks for the type of talent you're going to get out of Jefferson. Will
I
they
would
get
say
that?
even 3.
You think
I
3?
would say 3.
Okay.
I think 3.
Do you think they get
plus
3?
I think 3 plus a player is the bar.
Okay. I do agree with you. I think that is what he's worth. I think he's worth that much. I wonder if a team's gonna actually be willing to give that up, because we've just seen in the past player. You think so? Okay. Because
Justin Jefferson, I think, is a whole nother.
You also got to think about the fact
continent.
that but he's on an expiring contract.
Yes, I think even then.
Okay.
Even then, maybe that takes it down. Maybe that does take it down to 2 first round picks, but I still think that's even low.
Oh,
like
yeah,
I would still go 3 first round picks.
Yeah, well, it's just, I don't know. It's so weird because we have this kind of conversation where we're like, yeah, it's gonna be 3, it's gonna be like 2, it's gonna be, and then he gets traded and it's like a first and a third, and we both end up sitting here looking stupid. Like,
yeah,
but it's one of those
because
situations.
It's Justin Jefferson, that's not gonna happen.
Okay.
He's not gonna get traded in the first place.
Yeah.
But B, even if he were to get traded, it's not going to, like, I don't think, because a lot of the times when we think, oh yeah, this guy could fetch a lot more, like with Stephon Diggs recently, like, what, it was the second? Like, it's because they're older players. Like,
Yeah,
Jefferson is coming off of his rookie deal as, like, by far and away the best receiver in the NFL. None of these guys who've been traded are the best receiver in the NFL at the time of trade, and none of them
That's a good
are as young as Justin Jefferson is. I think that's a big deal. Yes, contract extension. Yes, there'll be few teams who will even have the money to pay him, but I don't know. I think for Justin Jefferson, you find a way to make it work, and I think the Vikings will do the same, and extending him for the Vikings hopefully soon. You don't want to push that number up even more. You see other receivers start getting contracts, that kind of pushes the number up a little bit.
It's also probably the best time to do it while your quarterback's still young. Like J.J. McCarthy, you probably want to sign that, get him locked down for as long as possible, right? At least that's what I think.
You gotta hope J.J. McCarthy's good too, or else.
Yeah.
Not
that or Sam Darnold, baby.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sam Darnold.
It's gonna be great. That or Nick Mullins. That's gonna be. They've got a pretty goddamn good quarterback room there in Minnesota.
Oh boy. Does Justin Jefferson even want to stay at this point?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe that is why. Maybe because I wonder what Kirk leaving does to affect that relationship there in Minnesota. I wonder.
Yeah,
Justin Jefferson to Atlanta.
That would be insane.
That would be insane.
But I do know that that Justin Jefferson was a big proponent of the Vikings re-signing Kirk and was going to be not happy if they didn't. So I do wonder if that's more of a thing than anything. But yeah, still I think just to kind of wrap up the conversation in terms of the trade rumors, it's not going to happen. We can go through reasons as to why it might, but ultimately I think he's going to stay. It would be a pretty big shock if he went elsewhere. And I mean, Minnesota's all the better for it, right? When you have the best receiver in the league, you don't let him go. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. No, and I think the question I'd toss back at you just for a bit of fun would be because are we assuming that they'd get 2 first-round picks or 3? If just to put a guess.
I would assume at this point, let's say just because it's an expiring contract, 2 and a Pro Bowl level player, not all pro, but Pro Bowl level player.
Okay, well let's assume if you were the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, would you rather have Justin Jefferson or Neighbors, a Pro Bowl player, and 2 first-round picks? Because that makes it a bit more interesting.
If you include Neighbors in there,
exactly. Then it gets a little interesting.
I think it depends. I think it depends what player you get.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then are we assuming you don't have to trade up for Neighbors? We're assuming the Giants are just giving us Neighbors.
Ooh. For the sake of this, we'll say the Giants are giving up Neighbors. We'll say that this is a trade in between the Giants and Minnesota.
And the Vikings for 2 first-round picks from the Giants, Neighbors, and who would we get from?
Just name a
Pro Bowl player from the Giants is kind of tough.
It is.
Who's their defensive? Brian Burns feels a bit rich.
Yeah.
For them to include in that. Dexter Lawrence may be a bit rich too. We'll say.
I don't even know.
We'll say, you know what? Let's say Kayvon Thibodeau.
That's what I was gonna say, but I didn't know if I'd consider. I don't know if he made the Pro Bowl last year.
I don't know if he made the Pro Bowl, but I'm thinking that kind of caliber of player. He will at some point in his career.
Yeah.
And if I'm the Vikings GM, I don't know. It's gonna take some wrestling.
It definitely. It's not an easy question to answer for sure.
It does depend on what the team is. So because it's the Giants, I might do it.
Okay.
Just because I think those first-round picks will be high. Because then you get a potential replacement in Neighbors, you get Thibodeau, and then you potentially can rebuild. It's because it's trades like that where you get multiple high first-round picks that kind of revitalize the franchise, right?
Yeah.
Look at the most obvious example is the Herschel Walker trade back in the 80s, where that's where the Cowboys 90s dynasty was built with how many picks they got from no kidding, the Vikings. Or even more recently, like the Russell Wilson trade, where Seahawks
That's
didn't miss
true.
a beat and made the playoffs the first year after trading their 10-year franchise quarterback because of how many players and picks they got in the Russell Wilson trade, and that's led to them having all pro players like
We
Devin
can say
Witherspoon.
that's yeah we can say that's why, and not Geno Smith instantly becoming a god out of nowhere for no reason at all.
I mean, well, that helps. That helps too.
Yeah,
But
Seattle definitely
but
predicted that. They knew that was gonna happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
they wrote him off, but he didn't write back though. We love Gino.
No,
Um,
and the reason I brought up the question was because I think I'd absolutely take that. I think with the potential we've
if you're
heard
the
and the
Vikings,
ways, if I'm the Vikings, I think you gotta take that because in that situation, even like as crappy as it is, let's assume worst case scenario, Neighbors doesn't work out. You're still getting a Pro Bowl type player, and 2 first round picks to just hope you get something good. At worst case
yeah,
scenario, your
but
team is still getting younger, which is kind of what the Vikings need. Not to say Justin Jefferson isn't young,
yeah,
but
but
at the very least, it's
it is
helping the
still
rebuild.
basically
That
3 lottery shots. Like
yeah,
that's the thing.
yeah,
Worst case scenario, you just get Kayvon Thibodeau.
I guess. But that's assuming if that happens, that's on you. If you're the general manager, that means that you missed out on 2 first round picks. Couldn't develop Neighbors. Like at that point, you're fired.
Yeah.
You got fired a year before that. The last draft pick came through. Like
Yeah, no, that's fair.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I think no matter what, it's kind of at the end of the day, it kind of worked out for Minnesota. They still got their future quarterback, assumingly their future.
And
quarterback.
they didn't even have to trade up that much for him, eh? They only
What
traded
did they
up
have to
one
give
spot.
up again?
Like I think
Yeah, like I don't think it was
not
much,
very
was it?
much
Yeah,
to trade up one spot. They also ended up getting Dallas Turner
that's
in
true.
at
Yep.
17. So they got a
At
great
the end of the
defensive
day,
player.
they
They
did
got a
have a
great
pretty good
quarterback.
draft.
Yeah, they did. I think it'll be. I think the season will be very interesting for them. It's one of the biggest transition years they've ever had. It's a Justin Jefferson contract year. If he even makes it to that, if they don't extend him before the season, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they'll
No,
be an interesting team to watch.
yeah, especially I mean in that division. No, not now.
Yeah, which we talked about
Yeah,
on the long lost secret tapes.
and
last
just to be
week.
clear, I would put the Bears ahead of them as well. Like that, and that puts, and that's not even saying that I actually do like a lot of the things that I see from Minnesota. I think they have a lot of good young pieces that if they break out well and everything goes well, you never know, right? Like when you have that amount of young players, the sky's the limit at the end of the day. You never know what's going to happen. For all we know, J.J. McCarthy could come into the league, have a great rookie year. That entire offense just flows well. Their defense ends up working out somehow, but don't worry about it. Like, you never know
They've
what's
got a
going to
good
happen.
coach. They've got a good
that's
coach.
true too.
Like,
You don't know what's going to happen with a team like this. I think realistically they are absolutely not a playoff team, but I think that's more just like I said, the division, like Lions, Bears, and Packers. Are you kidding me? That is
yeah.
that especially this year. That's not a fun division to be in. So at the end of the day, it's a tough road ahead for them, but I don't know. That's gonna be a fun division to watch though.